Hello, everybody. Haven't done one of these in a while. This is Becky from Northampton Film Festival. We do love a live stream. I'm here this evening because for many things, many of you might know that Northampton Film Festival this year opened the smallest arts centre in the world in Northampton on the Market Square. We're 3 metres by 4 metres, doing exciting things with film, creative industries, getting residents creative, just generally celebrating the arts in Northamptonshire. And one of our supporters is Click Arts Foundation. And they started doing some Tuesday sessions with us, the last Tuesday of every month, on all sorts of things around creativity, around well-being. And as it got a bit dark in January, we thought, you know what, we're going to bring some of these online. And particularly because we've been talking about well-being, we've been working with our volunteers on goal setting, and actually January can be a hard month. And actually it's going to be a really hard month, particularly for the film industry. And obviously this year has been a really hard year for the film industry. So it seemed like a good time for us to do a little bit of well-being check-in. And there is no better person to do that than Dr. Audrey Tang, who I shall bring in a minute. But the session today is called Beating Blue Monday and Staying Motivated. And like I say, this is kind of our fourth monthly end of the month Tuesday, talking about arts and well-being. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Audrey. Hi, Audrey. How are you?
Hello. Thanks, Becky. Very good, actually. So I will be talking about Blue Monday in a moment, but yeah, really good. And I think that's not a bad thing for this early in the year.
No, exactly. And before I get out of the way, two things actually. If people have got questions, you can put them in the chat under the YouTube video, and we will get those as we go. And we'll do a little Q&A at the end. But also, Audrey, do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself before you jump in?
Yes, I am a chartered psychologist with a specialism in workplace psychology. So my PhD was on burnout, and notably on customer and client facing professionals who practice something called emotional labor. And emotional labor is putting on a display of emotion that's expected of them, on top of having the skills that they need to show. So, for example, a teacher needs to know their subject, but they also need to remain calm, even though they might be shouted at or spat at or had a chair thrown at them, as I've had experience of, and so on. And how difficult that can be, and how that part of the job can actually be the thing that leads to burnout, not the challenging behavior in the classroom itself, but actually the emotional kind of performance that goes with it, especially when people don't understand that you're putting on an emotional performance. And I guess that was my first foray with arts and psychology really blending together very well. And so I now go into organizations, I work with students, I work with staff, and we look at leadership well-being.
Amazing. And can you tell us a little bit actually about Click Arts Foundation, which is the supporter of the Creative Place?
Yes, yeah. Click Arts Foundation was started by myself and my father. This is a charity, and we give grants to grassroots arts organisations that bring in well-being and do projects that really serve the community. And it's really came about because I've always produced shows. I've always been a community theatre producer and director, performer, and so on. Did that for over 30 years. Getting a bit old for it now, tired, no time, other things to pay the bills, and so on. And so what my dad and I wanted to do was to actually encourage and support others to be able to do what we did. And so that's how we started the charity. Sadly, my father passed away last year, and then he made a very generous donation, and that's what we use to fund the grants, and of course doing our own fundraising as well. So our next grant cycle is coming up. It's coming up in June, so please do apply. We give grants up to £2,000. That is our maximum, unless there's a very specific either headline sponsorship or very specific venue sponsorship or something like that, where we can consider more. But largely it's to get those grassroots projects off the ground, because we know how much the arts can really benefit people everywhere.
Absolutely. And yes, I mean, we had to turn the Creative Place around very quickly, and without your support, I don't know what we've done. So yeah, thank you very much. So without further ado, I'll let you get on with this a very topical subject for the last week of January, staying motivated. And on that note, I'll run away.
Oh, thank you, Becky. As I said when I first jumped online, Blue Monday, and I've used the term because everybody likes using the term, is not actually a real thing. It's a great example of marketing. So it was originally conceived for a travel article to encourage people to book holidays. And then a lot of PR and media jumped upon it, and then everyone talked about it as it's the saddest day of the year. And actually, that can be more problematic, because if we think we're going to be sad, then likely we are going to be sad. But also, we actually need to be having these conversations and checking in with ourselves every day of the year. So I wanted to use Blue Monday, but just as the example of the great way that media works. And so that's how powerful some of our messages can actually be. But today's topic is about motivation, and notably the idea of passion. Now, I'd like you to think, and this is particularly key for creative industries, because often we are motivated by passion. And that can be or become slightly problematic. Now, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's passion parade, but I do want you to think about a few things. And I'm also going to give you ways of staying motivated, but without burning out. So let's think about this. What motivates you? Is it the passion for something? Is it a purpose, feeling you're making a difference? Certainly the arts can make a huge difference to mental health, to well-being. It can beat loneliness. It can even go some way to supporting people through things like depression. Why? Because of the regularity of things like rehearsals, the ability to express, meeting new people, and so on. So there's so much the arts can bring. So there's purpose and meaning. Or is there something else that motivates you? I just want you to have a think about that for the moment. What is it that's getting you out of bed in the morning? Is it something called hope? And I'll come to that in a moment as well. Now, Benjamin Todd said, follow your passion is actually no help. And the reason he said that was because our passions can change. And if we stick too rigidly with what we think is our passion, we can become that person. And when we are that person as an identity, it can be really hard to get out of. A very silly, simple example was I was lucky enough to go skiing. Winter holiday, we hadn't been for a very, very long time. And I went out there thinking, well, I can ski. I really wasn't enjoying it because my feet were hurting and so on. And it was on New Year's Day. I just went, you know what? I'm gonna change to snowboarding. I've never snowboarded in my life before, but I took my skis back, swapped at no extra charge, which was very lovely, to snowboard. And literally, I went out a skier, came back a snowboarder, and I loved it. And I much prefer snowboarding. I'm not good at it by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't good at skiing by any stretch of the imagination. But the point is, I'd always thought, oh, I ski. Whereas actually, that's not true. And being able to make that shift helped me really enjoy the rest of the holiday. And so that's just that little thing that can change. What you think you are, who you think you are, can change. Allow it to happen, because sometimes that pivot can make a huge difference. YouTube even started off as a dating app. So, and it's changed quite a lot since then. So this is the research. Millennials will say in 2018 that actually 44%, that was the highest motivator, it was passion, but it was very closely followed by money at 42%. That is important to recognize, because it is really hard to be passionate and engage with your passion if you're struggling to put food on the table. That is really important. That is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we haven't satiated the bottom needs first, and they are things like physiological needs. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we able to eat? And then safety needs. Do we have a roof over our heads? Love and belonging, then self-esteem, then finally self-actualization. That's on top. It is really difficult to self-actualize, to really follow our passion if we're struggling everywhere else. So please be aware, money is actually important. It helps us become and allow ourselves to be good at what we're passionate about. In 2022, now bear in mind this is after the pandemic, Forbes found that a lot of people were actually quitting to follow their passion. Now that bubble kind of either burst or is currently bursting at the moment. The side hustle is not necessarily enough to sustain us. And the other problem with the side hustle is it's fun whilst we're maybe doing it on the side. But the minute it becomes something you have to eat, sleep, and breathe every single day, it can become really difficult. Just in my own experience, I went from being a secondary school teacher, then I took my PhD, but then I was still teaching at the same time because that's what I'm qualified to do. I then moved into training with the NHS, and it was only in around 2014 when I started thinking, oh, actually, I can do this on my own. But as soon as I broke away from the NHS and started going out as a freelancer, I had to take every single job going. It wasn't like, oh, I could just talk about leadership because that's my area and that was my PhD and that's what I am passionate about. No. I had to pay my bills. And so I was probably teaching more drama at that point because that's what I was qualified to do as a secondary school teacher than I did when I was a secondary school teacher because I was also teaching psychology at the same time. So that was hard. That was really hard. And it's only now, 11 years on, where I can actually enjoy teaching the subjects I really, really love. I still enjoy drama, but I didn't want to do it every single day. And so it's also worth knowing when it comes to money, after you have enough to live on it, actually anymore doesn't affect your happiness all that much. So there is something about passion that is quite important. But this is where we have to be really careful. A piece of research by Valorand et al. In 2003, so this is quite old research, highlighted the very important difference between something that they called harmonious passion and something they called obsessive passion. And let's not forget, especially if you're a freelancer, especially if you're working in the gig economy, you have to keep going. You have to find that drive, even when things are tough. And what Valorand says about this harmonious passion is, and they studied athletes, they studied sports people. Harmonious passion is where you choose to do the thing you're passionate about. It doesn't choose you. So with these athletes, those who had harmonious passion for the sport, they were enjoying playing the sport whenever they got the chance to play it. If they didn't get the chance because it was raining or because they had an injury or because they were ill or anything like that, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. They could find something else to do instead. However, the interesting thing about those who had an obsessive passion with what they were doing, and I can get how easy it gets to be at that stage, because there can be a point where you're thinking, I need to keep on doing this. I can't stop. They weren't enjoying doing it anyway. So when they were playing the sport, they weren't enjoying it. When they couldn't play the sport, they also weren't enjoying it. And so it just got to the point where they were just feeling down and disheartened regardless. And that's something they originally enjoyed doing. And so what's really important is there will be tough times in a gig economy, in a freelance life. But what we need to do is try and balance that a little bit. Now, something I said earlier, I mentioned hope. Hope can be a little bit problematic, especially for the creative industries, because you have to be aware of something called hope labor. And this is where everything sort of comes together. And why I'm just warning you a little bit, I'm just asking you to be wary about following your passion, because it can lead us astray sometimes. Now, what hope labor is when you work for free in the hope that it will lead you to the next big thing. It can happen. It can happen. You can do something and it can be your big break. And that's amazing if it is. The number of times it happens in real life compared to in films there's probably a huge gap between film and reality. So just be mindful of that. Because what actually happens is when people are working for free, what that does is it undermines pay for the whole profession. So when I was starting out as a freelancer, as I said, I taught a lot of drama. The things that I was coming up against was, even with local guide groups, I would be told, well, you're charging £30 for a session, whereas my daughter, who's a first year drama student, can do a drama workshop for free. Yeah, she possibly could. Does she have insurance? Does she know about safeguarding? Does she actually know how to teach? All of those things are really important. And there's an old kind of story that they use in business, and it's about a guy who comes in, taps a few pipes. A plumber comes in, taps a few pipes, and then charges £500 for it. And the person being charged is like, £500? What on earth is that for? And the plumber turns around and goes, well, that's for knowing where to tap. So this is the thing. Don't undervalue your skills. Don't undervalue your talents. Don't undervalue what you're really good at. Because otherwise, if you start saying, yeah, I'll do that for free, I'll do that for free, it kind of means other people are going to start going, well, if they will do it for free, why should I actually pay anyone in that profession? And then we get into the point of what could have become harmonious. You're enjoying it. You're getting remunerated for it. Becomes a bit obsessive because you're thinking, I must get the next job. I must do the next thing. I must work for free again. So just be mindful of that. And this little quadrant, this is our first exercise. This will help you. This will help you. You can draw this quadrant out. Whenever you are asked to work for free, think about it on these terms. High benefit or low benefit? That's one axis. High benefit to me, low benefit to me. Free or paid? Free or paid? And this is the way to think about this. If it is of high benefit to you and it's paid, that's a hell yeah. There is no question about that. That is hell yeah. High benefit and paid. Of course it is. That's doing what you want to do. That's the dream. Low benefit and free. Not today, Satan. Low benefit and free. No. And you've got to be strong. You've got to be strong. Now, the question mark comes in on what high benefit means to you and what low benefit means to you. So I'm going to give you an example. I produced 2 live stream shows for an American network called E360 TV. Now, with that, I have created a studio. I pay for the shows to be streamed. The studio, I pay the rent. I do all of those things. Well, I pay for it by doing sessions and delivery and, by doing my day job. But I do not pay people to appear on it. And the reason, well, there's many reasons for that. A, I can't afford it after paying for everything else. But B, what they get is me paying for them being in a studio and getting their work out onto the American streaming network. And I edit, I do all of that myself, and I give them clips to use on their own socials, and they can do what they like with it. If they're going to demand pay after that, for me, it's a hell no. It's not worth my time and effort for that. But then it may not be worth yours either. And I completely understand that as well. It might be that you think, well, do you know what? I don't get out of bed for less than £100. That's fine. If you're at that stage, great. You know where to tap and and that's brilliant. That is brilliant. But what's high benefit? What's low benefit? It's up to you. You really need to think that through. You really need to think that through. For me, high benefit is, does it make me feel good? That's something that's important to me. That's a value that's important to me. Am I doing good by doing it? And if so, to me, that's of high benefit. Does it build my profile? Does it get me out there? Does it get me seen? Those are all things that I have to consider because that's what I build my brand around. For you, it might be something different. So high benefit, low benefit, you've really got to think about that. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. If something is low benefit and paid, you might do it once and then decide not to. I don't know whether I've mentioned it in a webinar with Northamptonshire Film Festival before, but I have an email label saying "Not today, Satan." And that's where I put everything, even if it's paid, if I've really not enjoyed working with that person or don't want to be there. Obviously, Becky is in the hell yeah. So, but here we go. We have a situation where you get paid, but for whatever reason, you don't like it. Now, for me, it's about whether it compromises my values or not. So I have a high level, I believe, of integrity. I like to think I do. I try to practice in that way. Something I got concerned about in one of the jobs I worked once, which led to me leaving that job, was when I started getting asked to pass students who were not good enough to meet the criteria of passing. Because the last thing I wanted to have on my record was a panorama special and people asking, well, who passed that person vocationally? So that's where paid, low benefit, that wasn't going to happen. Another example of paid low benefit was when somebody wanted to engage my service to do webinars, to do this kind of thing. It was recorded videos, but they wanted to talk about the dark triad, which is Machiavellianism, narcissism, and so on, as really positive aspects of leadership. In other words, encouraging leaders to utilize those aspects of themselves. Now, whilst narcissism, be very careful with this, narcissism does not necessarily mean they are nasty people. They're just very ego-driven. And whilst leaders to some degree have to show those traits, it doesn't mean they're good, and it doesn't mean you need to embrace them. So that one was for me a no. You have to choose. If it's free and of high benefit, so for example, I did TEDx at the end of last year. Don't get paid for that, but huge benefit. That looks amazing on my CV. Absolutely. You need to decide. But for me, my values are where the high benefit is. My goals and my values. And so always think about goals and values. And if you think about goals and values, you're more likely to fall into the category, hopefully, of more harmonious passion rather than getting obsessive and therefore getting demotivated, demoralized, and so on every time you have to do the thing that you used to love doing. So today, really, I want to focus on goals and values. Now, the question I've just got here is your passion the same now as it was 3 years ago? It probably isn't. It probably isn't, but I bet your values are. Your goals may have changed as well, but the thing about goals is they are actually flexible. Somehow we're passionate. It always feels like, oh, it must be, I must do that. This is me. It's somehow linked with our identity. I actually would say link your values with your identity and leave your goals as your aspirations. Values with your identity, goals as your aspiration. Now, ikigai is a Japanese term for thinking about what is actually going to keep us aiming in the right direction. And this model tells us to think about, well, what do we love? What are we good at? And that's kind of where your passion sits, but that's not enough. You also have to think about the following things. What does the world need? What does the world need? And then the last bit, very important, but this is where, the free and paid quadrant comes in. What can you get paid for? That's not always as important. But when you're thinking about this, I come back to goals as your aspirations and values as the identity. Now, with this, especially in the creative professions, what I notice is that there's a lot more work in the area of creative health now. Now, I'm not saying if you want to be a musician, you need to do music therapy. I'm not saying if you want to be an actor, you need to do drama therapy or you need to do poetry for mental health or anything like that. I'm not saying you have to do that. But I am saying that becomes an option to pay the bills whilst you're also doing the performance element. I can again use my career as this. When I was very young, I wanted to be an actress. That's what I wanted to do. But I'm very old, and at the time, the best example I can give was 1 year, and this was admittedly all amdram. Despite being a really good performer, I can act and I'm good at acting, but despite that, the only role I got cast in was the princess in Aladdin, and I got cast in that role 3 times in 1 year. 3 times in 1 year. That's the only role they considered me for. And I got into stage school as well. And on the first day I walked in, they went, "Oh, you can be a Miss Saigon." Yeah, that was the only option. Only option. Wouldn't think of me for anything else. So I kind of learned pretty quick that maybe at that time, those aspirations that might turn into obsessive passion, I may not end up getting anywhere. What else can I do? And I happened to study psychology, then went into teaching psychology and drama, then specialized more in psychology. Turns out that's what the world needs. And what they also need is someone with a little bit of theatrical flair to put it across to them. And that's how I keep getting booked for jobs. Now, this is not all swings around. It is not all happy clappy either, in that people will either love me or they hate me. I am quite distinct in the way I present. I'm very unique in the way I do things. Like I teach public speaking, and I do that very much like a director. I don't just stand there and say, "Well, this is all the theory and this is how you do it." No, I make you do it, and then I direct you in that. And so I get recommended. But the point is, what I love is actually performance. I love performance. I always have. That's not changed. And actually, putting messages out there, that's part of who I am. Teaching, educating is part of who I am. I'm good at it. And turns out the world needed somebody, a psychologist who's a little bit theatrical. I don't miss acting, and I do enough community theatre, or I did enough community theatre to play all the roles I wanted to play. You know, a couple of slipped through the net, but I still managed to do most of them. And I'd like to try and convince you a little bit further that whilst I am not saying don't carry on pursuing that creative passion, it is if it's something that is so you've got to do what you know what you got to do, but cast your net more widely as well, because just because we love one thing so much, it doesn't mean we've got no room to love other things as well. You may find something else that could open more doors and then find your way back together. So another example there was I recently did a expert comment piece for a magazine, and they wanted me to do something in a certain way. They fed me the line, I gave it back to them, and they were like, "Oh my God, she can act." So those skills, you'll get to use them. You'll get to use them. I'm just saying, broaden your horizons a little bit. Keep them that little bit broader. And the reasons for this are, what really makes us happy? What really makes us feel good? Well, positive psychology will say it's PERMA. Now, PERMA breaks down to positive emotions, engagement, healthy relationships, meaning, and achievement. And Seligman, the father of positive psychology, he broke those down further into something he called the good life, and that's feeling in a state of flow. So that's enjoying what you're doing. And you can enjoy doing a number of different things. In actual fact, as we've seen earlier, if we're just doing the one thing, it can get a bit obsessive and not really that enjoyable at all. So keep those options open, because it keeps you feeling fresher. The pleasant life, and the pleasant life is where we have healthy relationships. I will do a session later on in these next few end of the month webinars where I will mention healthy relationships, because what Martin Seligman says is that whilst healthy relationships don't guarantee happiness, happiness is rarely found without them. And the other thing about keeping your horizons that little bit broader is that you might find people who you really connect with, but not in the place that you thought you'd find them. So in the acting industry, when I have been in there once or twice, I did do extra work and I made some nice friends there. I mean, it's not much, but I know in that world, people were really obsessed with, I must get on camera more often, and I must, I must do the next. What are you doing next? Which agency are you with? It was all a bit too much. But in the psychology world, especially in the world where they want media comment and media experts, I've met some really amazing people who really share my values, that they care a lot about helping others, but they also care about putting it across in a specific way that really resonates. So keep your options open and look for the pleasant life, but you may not find it in the place you think. And meaningful life, having purpose. And so other researchers said, well, what else brings us happiness when it comes to the workplace? And actually, again, passion is not the only thing. Doing what we like is not the only thing. And the reason I say that is because doing what we like also has bad bits too. And these are some of the things that can actually temper some of those bad bits. So even if you're deciding, no, I am just staying in this creative area and that's it, I am going to do that. Fine, not a problem. Use this to actually think about the people you want to work for. That's how you can also use this. So even if you're not thinking about it in a more broad, well, what other areas could I be good at that could also pay my bills? You can also use this with, all right, but I won't compromise my integrity because these are the things that are important to me. So Hertzberg said, fair salary. Come back to, please don't undermine your own profession by working for free. You get paid for the skill that you have. And somebody who's really good at talking about ethics and supporting people with ethics when it comes to pay is Emma Kendrick of LOL Theatre in Northamptonshire. You can look up LOL, Laugh Out Loud Theatre, Emma Kendrick. You'll find her address at the main contact address for LOL Theatre. You can always say that I recommended that you speak to her, but she's absolutely brilliant on the subject of ethics and being paid appropriately in the theatre. So fair salary, status, having support and guidance, healthy, positive relationships, recognition and achievement. Do you get, I mean, I know it's a silly thing, but I teach a dance class every Wednesday night. And one of the things I tend to try and do every week, sometimes it's not possible depending on the choreography, is I will always try and swap front line and back line. It's partly so people can't hide themselves at the back, but it's also because I want people to shine. I want people to have the chance to shine. I want to recognize people. So A, my class know that they can't hide at the back anyway, but B, they also know that I don't just put people at the back that I don't want to see. I want everyone to have the opportunity. So we swap them through. They have the chance to be recognized and achieve, and to achieve. Responsibility and meaning is another thing. So this is one person. Another person said, well, okay, these are the things I think are important, or I've found are important. My job fits within my life, my lifestyle. Think about your lifestyle. And that with that, when you're thinking about your lifestyle, think about your values, think about your goals, think about your priorities. Those are important too. Work that's engaging, healthy relationships, work that you're good at, work that helps others. And what is coming out of these, all three of them, meaning, helps others, and then you're going to get to this one as well, makes a difference. So McCaskill said, independence, so having some autonomy with what you do, that's really important to many people. Having a sense of completion, being able to see a project through to the end is really important. Variety, so not just doing the same thing day in, day out, that can get a bit much. Feedback, and again, the chance to grow, but again, making a difference. Finding meaning, finding that sense of purpose, connecting with your values. So I come back to that. Goals are your aspirations, but it's values that really talk to who you are, not necessarily passion. Think firstly about your values. Now, let's start thinking about some goal setting. this exercise, before I get to this, this next exercise, okay, it's called passion planning. I'd rather call it goal planning, just because of what I've been saying about passion. And this exercise was given to me by Amy Dawes. She is a musician in the Northamptonshire area. She is fabulous. I've heard her perform. She's incredible. I've downloaded a lot of her singles. She's absolutely brilliant. But this passion planning or goal planning exercise is really, really nice. And this is something I encourage you to do, perhaps even straight after today's webinar. You need to get yourself a timer. Now, I've got little fancy timers. We're not going to do it now. Kitchen timer is going to work just as well. You can see that I'm right next to all my training stuff. Or just a timer on your phone. And you set a minute. And you write down all your goals for the next month. Whatever you like. Just everything you can think of to write down in that 1 minute. Goals for this month. Then you're going to do the same thing and write down all of your goals for the next 3 months. Then, same thing, 1 minute, all of your goals for 6 months, and then a year. Okay. Now, you set a time for the main reason that it gives you a sense of urgency, but you end up only writing what's really important, because if you can't think of it, if you can't remember it, then maybe it wasn't quite so important. You're kind of tricking yourself psychologically. So I think it's a really clever task. And also it means there's a finite time that you spend on doing this, because otherwise we can get really over the top and creative with our goals. Keep those goals realistic. And what you do is you pick 1 or 2 of them. You look at the 1 month, you know, what these are the things I want to do this month. And these can be things as silly as I need to vacuum my room. So, you know, whatever it is. And pick 1 or 2 of them. Focus on doing them. If you can get through the whole list that you've put down for a month, great. Anything you haven't, move it into 3 months. Work on the 3 months. Anything you haven't done, move into 6 months, and so on. You can also check in with yourself maybe after 3 months, because your list may have changed. Remember, goals can change. You're allowed to change your priorities. So let's say we've done that. And we have identified a particular goal that we want to have. So whatever that goal is, write that goal down, identify that goal. So this is another exercise we're going to do with that particular goal. And this is a reverse engineering exercise. You've identified that goal, write it down. Now look around you and identify all the things that are actually helping you towards that goal, but also all the things that are not. Now, an example there, or what I always say to people is, you know, even if you're waiting in the wings, at least practice the steps. So when you're called to take on the role, you can do it. You can just, you know, upskill yourself whilst you're waiting. So for me, if my goal is to be a speaker, and the way I wanted to do it was through camera and webinars, then if I were to do this before the pandemic, I had a computer that just wasn't very clear. It ran really, really slowly. It was actually a laptop anyway, so it was really difficult to get a good view. Here I've got an HD camera, and that wasn't moving me towards that. And so what I did then was, because I could see everything was moving online, instead of spending my money on a suit or shoes or something like that, where I would be using it for face-to-face teaching, I saved up and spent my money on a really good computer. Right now I'm streaming to you on a gaming computer, because it's fast, it's plugged into the internet, and that means we get this really clear broadcast. And that set me up really, really nicely, because every time I do, and I got a mic as well, Rode mic, that set me up really, really nicely, because every time I do expert comment on the BBC or something like that, they even say to me, gosh, it's so clear. Yes, it is. I have a Rode. So identify what it is you want. but make sure your surroundings actually help that. So look around, what is going to help you? What is actually hindering you? And what action can I do or can I take to move me more towards it than against it? It might be taking something off this list or adding something onto this. But that's a nice way to start working towards your goal, because it's not enough just to know I want to do these things. We need to take the first step. Now, the first step can feel very overwhelming, and that's why something like this exercise can help, because we've now broken down all the things we need to do in this particular way. So now you know what action I need to take in order to make that change that I want. Now, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about something called the portfolio career. And the reason for this is because, and I don't know whether you can hear it in the background. Sorry, my dog's barking because there's someone at the door, but that's okay. The portfolio career is where you have a number of different streams of income, like a financial portfolio. And a lot of people in the creative industries, myself included, have one of these. And it's because I didn't want to work in the 9 to 5. I didn't want to work for somebody else. I wanted to work for myself. But in order to work for myself, I needed a number of different streams of income. And so this is where you need to ask yourself some questions. The portfolio career is building up lots of different side hustles. You may have one job and you add all the others, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But the question you actually do need to ask yourself, first of all, is, do I even need one? Do I even need a portfolio career? Now, for some of you, the answer is, well, of course I do. I have to pay my bills. And the more I can put my fingers in lots of different pies, the easier it becomes to pay my bills. Like that's the position I'm in. But I've got a friend of mine who actually has worked really, really hard all her life. She's got a number of savings. She has a little inheritance as well. And actually, she just keeps one job part-time, and she doesn't need to have a portfolio career. She just volunteers in all of the different things she wants to do. And that's what keeps her happy. So ask yourself that question. Do I actually even need a portfolio career? But if you do, like me, then really consider the following things. Consider actually, is there one of those things I do want to make a career out of, or will that become obsessive and is that going to become a problem? Or am I happy keeping a number of side hustles? If I am already branching out on my own, you need to make sure you have things like a bank account, keep good records, pay your taxes, all of that kind of stuff. And you may consider that actually doing so many things is maybe too much. It may be overwhelming. You may not be that type of person. That's okay. But the thing that you can consider is, if you do have a lot of different streams of income, it might allow you to take more risks in the ones that are really important. So what I mean by that is, if you know that you have got this regular contract from one particular person, and that's great, excellent. So that means with the other things, and maybe the other things that do really motivate you a little bit more, you can take a few more chances. Maybe you can put your name out there a bit more. You can enter a few more competitions or anything like that. You can design, get a bit more creative with whatever you're doing, design your own courses, design your own workshops, whatever it might be. A portfolio career allows you to be able to do that. Because if one stream of income is not performing yet, the others might be. So it does mean you at least can rely on having that stream of income. And the other thing to consider with a portfolio career is always, as I said, upskilling, learning not for the job that's out there now, but actually what that job's going to look like in a year's time, as an example. That's the mistake a lot of people who go to uni make, because they think, well, I'm skilling up for the job that I'm going to have when I leave uni. And actually 3 years is quite a long time, and things can change a lot in that time. We're already talking a lot about the use of AI, and that can be something we might need to think about learning or using or utilizing in our job, so that when we go for a job where we need to use it, we're already familiar with it. So that's something else you need to consider is upskilling yourself. Another thing might be also to have an exit strategy if you are, say, in a long-term career and you want to leave that one in order to pursue what was a side hustle and is now actually a full-time job. And the bottom line of your exit strategy really is, what is my financial bottom line? What is my financial bottom line? I come back to money is important, because if you cannot pay your bills, it's really hard to self-actualize and do the other stuff. So if you know that and you know how you can maintain that, the rest of it's a little bit easier. When it comes to maybe feeling a bit meh with our work, one of the things that I recognize from my clients is it's often because their workplace engages their skills, but not their strengths. So this is another exercise I'd like you to think about. I'd like you to make 2 columns, one labeled strengths and one labeled skills. And I want you to write down in your skills all the things you're really good at, but that exhaust you. And in your strengths, I want you to write down all the things you're really good at, but they energize you. So what tends to happen here is people get promoted on their skills. And I see this, it starts in uni. It starts in uni because you do group projects. And then, you know, as usual, some people don't do as much as they should in a group project and you end up doing everything. And then it turns out that actually you can do PowerPoints really well, or you can present really well, or you can do the spreadsheet really well, even though you hate it, even though you absolutely hate it. But because you did that really well, everyone suddenly goes, oh, well, you're really good at that. You can do that next time. And unfortunately, what also happens then is when we get praised, we get a little hit of dopamine. Now, dopamine responds to praise, it responds to achievement, it responds to, it doesn't care what it responds to, it just responds to nice, a treat, a surprise. There goes dopamine. And because that feels good, what I've seen in my clients is they've got promoted on their skills. And they're at the top of their career at the age of 45, and they've gone, how did I get here? And how can I get off? Because I really don't even understand why I'm here. I don't like what I'm doing, but I'm really good at it. And a really good example of one of my skills is organizing. I am an exceptional organizer. I can organize events, I can organize shows, I can organize parties and so on. And one of my first jobs was in events, in fact. I hate it. The amount of effort it takes me to actually do it, because my brain is a lot more chaotic than people think. But because I've got systems and strategies that I can do it really well. But this means even my friends, they will go, oh, Audrey will organize it. Audrey will do this. Audrey will do that. And sometimes Audrey actually sits there and goes, yeah, if I don't want to do it, they will go, oh, well, wouldn't it be nice if we did this? Yes, it would. And then I wait. And then I see if anything comes of it. And if I don't want to do it, it's great, because it won't happen. Anyway, so organizing would be one of my skills. And if I just got promoted on that all the time, I'd be in events and probably really hate it. But one of my strengths, which I hope comes across, is teaching, presenting, educating, all those things. And so, again, by knowing the things that you can still get better at your strengths, you can still practice at them, but these are the things that make you feel great. And if you are feeling down and meh, you could be kind of in the job you want and in the field you want, but the actual task you're doing could well be just to be using your skills, not your strengths. And this is the same thing. If you're the only person doing everything, you could be exhausting yourself to having to do all of these things rather than really being creative. I've got a client at the moment who is so focused on the sensible parts of their job that their biggest complaint, and I feel for them, is I haven't got time to create. I haven't got time to compose. I haven't got time to be able to do those things. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find time for him. So just, be aware of those things. And so strengths versus skills. And if you are feeling a bit meh, could be because you're doing too much of that and not enough of this. And then when you have this, look for the jobs and the outlets that allow you to use those a bit more. So ultimately, know your goal. Know your goal, whatever your goal is. And whatever that is, write that down. This is a little exercise, which I think I have given in the past. It's just a nice one to use. To reach that goal, what are the things you need to do? What are the things you need to do? So it might be, if your goal is to, I don't know, write a book. Let's just say you need to maybe you need to research it. So maybe that's research is quite a lot. You might need to pitch it to a publisher, pitch the idea. It might be you actually need to get around to writing it, but maybe you love writing, so that's easy. Maybe you need to get the photography for it, and that's also great. So photography, and so on, whatever that goal is. But you tell me the importance of all of the things that go into making that goal, because this is you. This is your goal, your priorities. So if you ever see this task, just normally, what you'll see is these are all very even. But I don't think priorities work that way. I think we need to set our priorities. Because once you know all the things you have to do, you then ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much have I done? How much have I done to get there? And maybe you've done tons of research, and maybe that's at 9. But maybe you haven't pitched it to anyone. Maybe you've started writing. Maybe you've done not enough photography. Right now, this is where you stand when it comes to reaching that goal. And just looking at that, I suspect the thing that you'll carry on doing, even though it doesn't help anything else, is you'll probably carry on researching. Because that bit, yes, it's important, but it's clearly the bit you like. So it's clearly the bit you're going to be spending a little bit more time on. So do this. Be really aware of the things that you actually need to do, and actually work on the other things, pushing them up one more notch. That's how you reach a goal. But putting that all together, make sure the goal is something that you find meaningful, that connects with your values, that utilizes your strengths, and gives you that sense of purpose. And also, don't let what you do get too wrapped up with who you are, because that's when passion can become a little bit destructive. And that's when purpose becomes important to recognize and find, and that in itself works as a motivator. So I will leave it there now and bring Becky back, and we shall have any Q&As or any questions that you might have.
Hello, thank you very much. I've written lots of notes, and there's lots of things that ring really true with me about many things. Yes, we've got a question from Katia in the chat. Could you recommend us books to learn more about this? And I know, obviously, you've written books as well as
which bit really is the thing. So strengths and skills, that would be Seligman. And what I would actually recommend, don't worry about all of the words and all of the messy stuff here, but if you go to www.authentichappiness.sas.upenn.edu, hopefully you can see that, or if you just simply Google University of Pennsylvania questionnaires, there is something that Seligman has created called the Values in Action, VIA Character Strengths. And what that does is, it's a long questionnaire, but if you just do either the child's version, which is only 20 minutes, or you sit through doing the long one, it actually gives you some of the values that you find really important. It gives you your top 5 ones, and it gives you your bottom 3. Now, the bottom 3 doesn't mean you don't find them important. It just means you don't use them quite as much. So I've done this task, and for me, zest and enthusiasm is like quite up at the top, but bravery is quite near the bottom. And it's true, because I don't want to go and, bother people or shoot from the hip. I'm not like that. But that is a really nice little questionnaire, so I can recommend that, and that's free. You do need to sign up to the University of Pennsylvania, but they don't spam you or anything. It's just because they use your results for research, so that's why you sign up for it. But they give you a full report of all of this, and that is absolutely free. So that's something I would do definitely for values. I mean, if you want, yes, you can look at my books. Probably the best ones, or the best one, would be this one, which is The Leader's Guide to Resilience. Or if you just drop me an email, I can send you a chapter on whichever area is the most important to you. So that's probably the one I would recommend for motivation and having the courage to take action, because resilience, well, the way I talk about it, is all about taking action. Mindfulness is a lot more about clarity of thought, and well-being, which the other book is much more about self-compassion. So it's a different focus, and resilience is probably the key thing and the area I do a lot of this work from. Martin Seligman, another person I would recommend. He's written a lot of books, but I think Flourish, that's one of the best books by Martin Seligman. That's another good one. So yeah, hope that's a good start at least. But
yeah, she said perfect, thank you. So yeah. I did a strengths-based leadership course recently, and yeah, it's really interesting. So I did a big old questionnaire, and yeah, it's really a really interesting way to kind of move your thinking, because there's things that everyone like you say, that university project thing is a really great example, that you kind of like, oh, you're the one that could do that, so you keep doing that, but you're like, it's killing you.
You don't want to do it anymore, and but then because everyone goes, oh, you're so good at it, we just get that boost, and it's enough to make us do another project like in the same way.
Yeah, and I think as well, I think the film industry, like, again, lots of things rang true with me. You know, I was kind of telling myself for such a long time, I was like, this is my goal, this is what I define myself by, this is what I want to do. And then I kind of got to the point where I was like, is it? But I've been doing it so long that I'm like, it's really hard to give it up. But it was 100% the right thing to do and change direction. I think in film particularly, probably, and maybe other creative industries, you know, it's like, oh, you wanted to be a director, you should want to be a director forever, and you should want to direct and never do anything else. You know, and it's like, no, you can change, you can do multiple things, you know, and I think there's definitely, you know, there's something in the saying that variety is the spice of life and all that.
Well, this is the thing. I think everybody got told jack of all trades, master of none, you know, that's where they tell you to specialize. Well, that very much like Blue Monday. That's not the full thing. It's jack of all trades, master of none is oft times better than master of one. In other words, if you do diversify, it is actually better for you because you have transferable skills compared to being a really niche specialist. Unless that suits your values and your personality, it's much better to diversify. And the thing, exactly what you're saying, Becky, even if you think, I want to be a director, but actually I'm quite good at acting, or all of them feed into each other. You can, the number of people, the film stars I see who direct and act in their same show or same film, or if you are a director who can act, you can bring out so much more in people that you're supporting. Because again, that's what I do in public speaking. It's what I do when I direct people. I can see what they're going for because I can act. Otherwise, directing can be a bit, oh, move there, do that. That's not directing. It's about really bringing the story to life. So all of those diverse skills really play into whatever career you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, on that note, well, thank you so much, Audrey, for giving up your time to share your knowledge, which I do love listening to you speak, because I find your enthusiasm, you're presenting very, you know, infectious. So yes, but I'll put Audrey's website up on the screen in case you want to check her out. And like she said at the beginning, you know, it's Click Arts Foundation that supported us at Northampton Film Festival to open up the Creative Place in Northampton, and they've got grants. She'd mentioned grants at the beginning. Go and have a look. The next two things that we're doing with Audrey is that we've got on the last Tuesday evening of February, busting career stress and goal setting. So, I mean, perfect lead on from what we've been talking about. We'll do that again, so it will be on the Northampton Film Festival YouTube, so you just tune in there. And then the final one of this financial year, I suppose, is I'm very much thinking about stuff in financial years at the moment. Tuesday, 25th of March, 6 p.m. again, online, recovery from setbacks, which, oh my life, if you're in the creative industries, you will get many. So yeah, an ideal one. So yeah, thank you very much, Audrey. I think we will leave it there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.